So as of today, Senate Republicans have decided to pass Donald Trump's mega bill known as the Big Beautiful Bill, and I'm telling you, it is bad for the American people. If you haven't heard anything about this bill and don't know exactly what it entails, here's basically the rundown. The Big Beautiful Bill, at face value, seeks to achieve these things: tax cuts, state and local tax deduction, no tax on tips, overtime and car loans, child tax credit, immigration enforcement, military funding increase, cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act. There are also some other things like the fact that it raises the debt ceiling by $4 to $5 trillion and introduces MAGA saving accounts, which I didn't think that was a real thing until I heard about it. It ended up passing the Senate 51-50 with J.D. Vance being the tiebreaker. So at face value, a lot of these things might not sound that bad to the average American, but if you do any kind of deeper dive into this is going to put the American populace and economy into the weeds. So I'm going to be breaking this down here step by step and explaining exactly why this bill is so bad for the people. So first of all, we have the issue of national debt, which this bill adds trillions to. Now, just to be completely clear about things, debt isn't always necessarily a bad thing, and as a matter of fact, deficits can actually help during recessions or during a sluggish period in an economy. But this bill is going to be increasing debt at a time in which the economy is doing fine, so we're borrowing when we don't need to, which is going to put upward pressure on interest rates, which is something called crowding out. And for anyone who doesn't know what crowding out is basically just what happens when the government borrows more money and it competes with businesses and people who also want loans. As a result, it drives up interest rates, so it becomes more expensive to buy a house, start a business, invest in tech, that kind of thing. This is something that's going to be slowing down long-term economic growth because it discourages investment. And on top of that, higher debt inherently makes us vulnerable, because if interest rates go up, just servicing the debt, paying the interest takes up more and more of our budget. As a result, it's going to end up squeezing out spending on useful things like education, roads, healthcare, and all the extra debt is not going to be going towards investment in the future. It's probably going to be going to tax cuts for people who don't need them. Another negative effect of crowding out is that because of the fact that businesses are going to be investing less, we're going to see a lot less new jobs, lower wages, and slower productivity gains. I also think it's worth mentioning that there's going to be a lot less room for emergencies, and what I mean by that is by the time the next recession or crisis hits, we won't have much room to borrow any more money. Another glaring issue of this bill is medical care. Like I mentioned before, this bill plans to make a lot of cuts to Medicaid, which could mean a lot of people lose their coverage. The bill is planning to slash over $1 trillion from Medicaid and SNAP through work mandates, provider payment caps, and redetermination requirements, which is going to worsen safety net erosion. Health experts at Yale and UPenn are warning of over 51,000 preventable deaths per year because of this. On the issue of cutting funding to important things, this bill also proposes a lot of clean energy rollback. This bill is going to be threatening over 180,000 green energy jobs and may drive electricity prices up by 50% by the year 2035. Without any clean energy incentives, private companies are going to be scaling back, which means the average American's electric bill is going to be through the roof pretty soon. And what's even more significant is that with no clean energy incentives, the pollution is obviously going to end up driving public health costs, like more asthma and respiratory illness, which is going to hurt families and local economies. Another big problem here is the issue of border and security spending. While it cuts social safety nets, the bill allocates $150 billion for defense and an additional $70 billion for the border and ICE enforcement. This is a lot of money to spend on these kind of things, especially in light of the fact that the education and healthcare sectors are suffering a lot more right now and could definitely use some of that funding. A lot of people who have fallen into the whole GOP rhetoric of, oh, this is essential for national security, it's really not. What this really is a weaponized mass enforcement strategy funded by your tax dollars. And as an additional slap in the face to the American populace, it's going to cost more than any plausible economic or security upside. And what's even worse are the sheer amount of negative externalities that are going to ripple across communities, the amount of families that are going to be torn apart, the labor shortages in food and care sectors, and the effect on civil participation. The Cato Institute has even gone as far as to warn that these deportation targets ignore immigrants' tax contributions because removing them shrinks our GDP, shrinks the tax base, and may cost us in upwards of $886 billion over the next decade. And while we're on the subject of punching down on the marginalized, let's talk about the tax cuts and wealth transfers of this bill. While poverty worsens in America and the middle and lower classes only get weaker, the wealthy are going to receive permanent SALT increases from $10,000 to $40,000. They'll also be receiving new deductions for tips and overtime and expanded child tax credits. These windfalls are going to be going up to top earners who have a very low marginal propensity to consume, which means the economic stimulus is going to be very minimal here. Meanwhile, there are going to be millions of low-income Americans losing Medicaid, SNAP, and green jobs. This is a great example of perverse tax incidence, which is basically just where the money flows upwards and social mobility flows down. downward. This is also known in a lot of circles as the reverse Robin Hood effect, a system that is, in simplest terms and very commonly said, designed to keep the poor poor and make the rich richer. Another big problem of this bill is that it's allowed Donald Trump and the GOP to continue their witch hunt attacks against intellectualism and education. The bill plans to end subsidized federal loans for undergrads after July 1st, 2026, which means federal interest starts accruing the minute you enroll. This, among a lot of other restrictions and axing, are going to shatter accessibility for part-time and non-traditional students, which is going to disproportionately affect low-income working and adult learners. This is also going to be a big problem for community colleges and public universities that are going to now bear risk-sharing penalties for defaulted loans, which is only going to worsen financial instability. So it's for these reasons and a medley of others that I didn't even begin to get into. If you want to learn more about the bill itself, there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle, so I would read up on it if you want to know more. But this part is just going to be like kind of the quantifiable facts aside and just my 2 cents on it personally and what I think is wrong with it. This bill being passed is a lot more significant than just a collection of harmful policies. It marks a very dangerous and radical precedent in American governance. If this becomes the new norm where bills this large and this significant can be passed in the dead of night without like any real input from voters or even most lawmakers, then like why pretend this is even a democracy anymore? If you look at the sheer trickle-up economics and the amount of tax cuts for the 1%, like it's very clear to see that this bill was not made in the interest of public well-being. This bill was created in the interest of serving donors, lobbyists, and a political agenda that could not care less whether the average American suffers or not. And for an administration that took this whole America First approach, that's very ironic to me. Because at the end of the day, this bill has revealed the true agenda of the Trump administration. And I think it's just evident as seeing things like slashing healthcare, cuts food aid, killing green jobs, and ramping up deportations, all the while giving rich people bigger tax breaks. They dressed it up like some populist win for working Americans, and it's going to help out the average man, but that is so evidently a lie. The only people winning here are the best connected and richest 1% of society, and for everyone else, it just sucks. And morally, it's just reprehensible. I mean, we're talking about a government choosing to take healthcare away from its people, choosing to make food more expensive for struggling families, and choosing to wreck climate progress just to say they cut taxes or, quote, secured the border. And one of the craziest things about all this is I don't even think most people know or care. I opened my TikTok as soon as I heard the bill got passed, and I saw more about like the most recent Love Island episode or whatever than this. And that's precisely why Trump and the GOP want to attack education. They want to attack intellectualism because they're aware of the fact that when they have a dumbed down, fully intellectually docile society, people are not going to question things they do like this. So yeah, this bill is a complete mess. Economically, morally, politically, it fails on literally every level. And I think it's just so reflective on how much this administration has failed and how far it's fallen from its original intent, if it was ever genuine, which I don't think it was. But I would like to remind everyone of one thing. Nothing ever happens.